In today's project, we're going to layer adhesive vinyl over one of these bookmarks to create this autumnal bookmark. Let's make this. This project's inspired by two different things. The first is the fact that autumn started this week. Down in Tasmania in particular, it weirdly starts getting warmer in autumn, especially in March, before it gets very cold from April through to nearly December. So that's my first inspiration. The second is going back to basics and looking at how to layer vinyl on acrylic and layering it so that we can have something that looks like it's made up of a couple of components and using different colors of vinyl to decorate. The materials in this project are very minimal. We've got a standard grip mat, some scrap adhesive vinyl, an acrylic bookmark I got mine from AT Blanks Australia, and we've also got some chiffon ribbon from Shein. We can do this whole project in Design Space. Now, you could use Google Images, you could use Canva for this, but I was so excited when I found that there was a free image in Design Space for this. So I'm going to use Design Space for the whole thing. Now, first job I'm going to do is create a guide for my bookmark. Now, I've measured my bookmark and it is 5 centimeters by 13 centimeters. So I've chosen a shape, which is the square shape, and then I've gone up to the sizing and I've unlocked the padlock and then changed the width to 5 and the height to 13. That is essentially the size of you would say the printable area, but the area where we're going to put vinyl. Then I'm going to add some text. Now, I've chosen Rostula and I've also chosen Poplar Street. Now, both of these I have downloaded from 1001 Fonts. If you want to see how to use 1001 Fonts, go to my personalized cap video, which goes through how to use 1001 Fonts. Otherwise, you can use Wordmark, which goes through all of your fonts on your computer, and you can check out how to use that on my New Year's Eve Bubbles Bottle project. Now that I've chosen my fonts, I'm just going to add it to this bookmark. Now, this is up to you how you design this. I'm playing around with mine because I'm not sure whether or not the font will be big enough to put the way I want it to. So I'm going to write, this book is Unbe-leaf-able. It's for my autumn theme. It's my autumn pun for this year. So I'm just trying to work out whether or not I will have the word unbelievable as one that goes across the bookmark, or whether or not I will have leaf as the one word. So I'm playing around with this, and all I know is I want Rostula font for the book is, and I also want Poplar Street for the leaf. So it's just a matter of playing around with it. Now, you've seen that I have chosen to have leaf as the one word, and then the other words are fitting around it in that Rostula font. I've aligned that text, and I've also changed the colors. The colors are important that you change them. So we're going to keep this book is Unbe-leaf-able as one color, and we're going to have leaf as a different color. I'll explain why this is kind of important for a bit later. Then I've gone into the images tab and I've done a search for leaves. Now, when I started thinking about this project, I thought there's no way there's going to be some leaves on here that are free that will be suitable for what I want to do in terms of layering. But lo and behold, here they are. Now you can see that we've got 5 different kinds of leaves, but inside each of those leaves, we've got some dotted lines. They're score lines, but I'm going to show you how to change them into cut lines. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup my set of leaves, because I want to be able to play with them and manipulate them separately. Then for each of my leaves, I'm going to change the score line, which are like those veins, because obviously this is a project that has been built to fold your leaves to put them, I don't know, as a decoration of some description. But I want to turn them into a cut line. So I click on the down arrow next to the leaf, then I choose the score line, which in each of these cases seems to be the top component of the leaf group. And then I want to go up to operation on the top left, and I'm going to change that to a basic cut. Now, the reason I want to change it to a basic cut is because I want to be able to cut this out of vinyl. Then I'm going to do an offset. Now, I don't want the offset to be too thick, and I'm not really concerned of making the offset exact, because I think that kind of adds a little bit of dimension to it, because we know that leaves are not perfect and leaves are not supposed to be without a bit of movement and a bit of life. So I've done an offset of 0.1, and you can see now that I've got these veins that I'm going to be able to cut out. And I'm going to then delete the really thin lines, the original basic cut. So delete those, and I am keeping the thicker offset lines. Then I'm just going to group the leaf and the offset together. I've moved them to the front, the offset. I've moved the offset to the front mainly just for a visual aspect. You don't have to do that. But the reason I've grouped them is just so I can move them around when it comes to placing them on the bookmark template. So just play around. Like I said before, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to fit perfectly within that leaf. I'm not sure why they're not fitting perfectly. I think maybe because of the thicker line. But just play around, and that imperfection is not a huge deal. Now that I've completed all that, I'm going to change all of the offsets to black. Again, I'll explain why I kind of want them all to be the same color in a minute. But then I'm just moving them over to my bookmark template, and I'm just playing around with them. Now, a lot of the times I will say to you, don't worry about your placement so much. We're just really looking at for whether or not they'll fit on our space. But for this project, I want you to make sure that you are putting them in the exact spot you want them to be when you do your cut, because we're going to cut them all of the leaves are going to be cut as one component, and all of the offsets are going to be cut as one component. So it's important to make sure that you are placing all of your leaves in the right spot, which means making sure that your leaves aren't overlapping in this project. Again, in other projects, we might overlap them and do some extra offset work, but in today's, we're going right back to basics, and we're just doing a leaf without an offset. So don't worry, make sure that you are not overlapping. Now that you've got them grouped in the way that you're placed in the way that you want them to be placed, you're going to now ungroup each of those leaves, because we need the offset and the actual leaf shape to be separate. Once you've ungrouped all of them, I want you to choose all of the offsets first, holding the shift key down and clicking in the layers panel. Click all of the offsets, and then I want you to go down to attach. This means that all of those offsets will cut in that exact shape, in that exact position, so that when we go and try and layer them, they'll all layer together. Then I want you to go through and do the same thing with the leaves. You'll notice the leaves all change to one color. That means that you've done the attach properly. They'll move in front of the offset, and that's fine. It doesn't matter for this part of the project. Then you're going to do the same thing with this book is Unbe-leaf-able. I want you to select those in the layers panel, and I want you to do an attach for that as well. Again, this will make sure that when you cut it, it will cut in the exact position that you have done in the canvas here in Design Space. Leaf isn't a problem because we can place leaf at a later date. Then you're going to make sure you save it, and then you go to make. Now I'm going to move all of the words and the images to one mat. You can see that it starts out with 4 because we've got 4 different colours, but we're going to move them all to the black mat. And I'm just moving them each to a different corner of the mat number 1, just so that they're as far away as possible and we shouldn't have any overlap with our little bits of scrap vinyl. Now you can see that to move it to another mat, I'm just clicking on those 4 dots in the top left corner and I'm clicking move to mat. Now when I go into make, I'm just going to choose vinyl as my base material. I've chosen vinyls that have got the similar thickness, but if you haven't chosen vinyls that are in similar thicknesses, you might want to leave them on their own separate mats. So just be careful, mainly because you want to make sure that when it's cutting, it's going to cut all the way through each of your pieces. If you've got a thicker vinyl and a thinner vinyl, it may not cut through properly. I'm doing my weeding on the mat that I use to put through the Cricut. The reason I'm doing that is because we've got some little components. So I've started to find that if I weed it on the mat, those components kind of stay down a little bit better because the backing is staying stuck and staying put. And you'll also notice that with the black weeding in particular, which is those curly words, I'm actually reverse weeding. So I'm just taking out the inside of each of the letters. I'm not actually going in and taking the vinyl that's around the outside, because we're going to do a reverse weed before we place it onto the bookmark. So now we've weeded everything, it's time to put this all onto our bookmark. Now I'm going to use the wet method here. So to begin with, I'm just removing one side of the protective backing, I suppose it's called, from the bookmark. I'm going to leave the other one on there because as we're doing this project, it'll move around and shuffle and I don't want it to get scratched. And then I'm going to rub it down with rubbing alcohol. Now I just use Isocol, which I got from Coles. But you can use any rubbing alcohol that you have at home. This is just in case there are any extra oils or anything left from that acrylic backing. In reality, you shouldn't have to do that, but I like to err on the side of caution and just give it a little rub with the rubbing alcohol. And then we're using the wet method. So I've just got a little bit of detergent in water, and I'm just going to put some on my bookmark. Now, the idea behind that is that hopefully we're not going to get any bubbles from our when we place our vinyl down onto the acrylic. Now, we've got everything weeded, and as I said before, we're going to use the reverse method. So all I'm going to do is put down my transfer tape straight down onto the black component, and you can see that as I lift, I'm lifting the back as well as the transfer tape. And what should be left behind are all of the little components. This is particularly important for the eyes because we always lose our dots for our eyes, and also full stops are the same thing. And I also sometimes have a little bit of trouble with dashes. So in this project, I've got dashes and I've got dots. So I definitely am using that reverse weed method for this. Lifting it, just be careful because you don't want to rip what you've done. So just lift carefully, don't rush that. All right, now that I've done the reverse weed, now it's just a matter of placing it down onto our acrylic. Now the great thing about the wet method, not only does it get rid of any bubbles, but it also allows you to center your work, because as soon as you place it down, it's not completely stuck down. So you can move it around in case you don't have it aligned either in the center if that's what you're after, or it might be in line with the shape that you're trying to place it down. And then once you've placed it down, you grab a scraper or a little squeegee and you're going to get rid of as much of that water underneath the tape as possible. Once you've done that, it should kind of create this little seal where the vinyl is sticking down onto that acrylic, and you've got the ability to get rid of any of those air bubbles that are underneath as well. So I use a combination of a squeegee and some paper towel to do this. Now, I think maybe I've put a little too much water. I've never had it so watery. And also, I may have put a little bit too much detergent in because it feels really soapy, and normally mine don't feel this soapy. So I don't know, we may have a few little issues, but looking at it looks right. So we'll see how we go. It's just this amount of water is bothering me a bit. So lo and behold, as you can see, it is all lifting. Now this is going to take me a little while to lift all of this up, which is fine, but it's not ideal, particularly if you're trying to do something quickly. But all I'm going to do is use a combination of that squeegee, and my best advice is to use the squeegee to hold down the letters as the transfer tape is lifting off. I don't know how to explain that, so just keep watching and you'll see that I use the squeegee kind of in a line to hold the vinyl down onto the acrylic while I lift the transfer tape. Well, it's finally worked, and it did take longer than I would have liked, but I think the effort is worth the time because it is. It's in a nice spot, it hasn't bubbled, and it looks really good. So now I'm going to continue on and add the rest of the layers. I'm going to start by adding the leaves. The reason I'm going to do that is just to let this book is all set and dry a little bit, but also so that we can kind of get moving onto the layered component of the veins. So again, we're going to use the wet method. I'm going to make sure that I don't put as much liquid down this time because I think that was a major part of my problem. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some baking paper down on this bookmark. The reason I'm going to use baking paper is because it helps us with our layering. So because vinyl doesn't stick to baking paper, and what I can do is I can lay the transfer tape and press the transfer tape down onto my bookmark without actually positioning my leaves and having them permanently attached to the bookmark until I'm ready. So if you watch carefully, you can see that I'm just pressing the transfer tape down. I'm trying to position these leaves so they are in the center of my bookmark. I'm also making sure that that bottom leaf isn't touching any of our text. I'm lifting it up a bit because it kind of can help if you've got a bit of light behind it to be able to see. But I think I've centered it. And now that I've centered it and I've really pressed down that bit of transfer tape, now I'm just going to use the squeegee to hold it down in place, and then I'm just going to lift that baking paper out from underneath, and then I should be able to lower it down on a little bit of my liquid/detergent mixture and follow the same process as I did before by squeezing out any of the water. that worked much better. Although my leaf on the left-hand side is a little bit askew, but we can fix that later, I think. Now I'm going to do the same thing with leaf. So I'm going to use a little bit of baking paper just to help with that positioning of the word leaf. And then finally, the same thing again for my gold vinyl. Now the gold vinyl, like I said before, it doesn't have to be perfectly placed over the top of each of those leaves, but you want it to be close enough, because we know that the design isn't exact, but we also don't want it to be completely off center or anything like that. So it does take a little bit of playing around, but I think the final product is worth that little bit of effort. So make sure that you're using that baking paper as well as your transfer tape to position your veins over your leaves. Gosh, it has worked. I've got no little bubbles. Those veins, I think they give that real autumn vibe to it, and a little bit of special, a little bit of a special take. I've just used a little X-Acto knife to cut off the little bit of leaf that's hanging over the edge. So I didn't position that in the center very well, the leaves, but I'm not sure that it's really noticeable. Now that all the layers are set, it's just a matter of taking off the acrylic backing from the back. So just the same way as I did with the front, I'm just using my weeding tool to lift it. And then I'm going to use some of this chiffon ribbon, which I adore. And it is a very trendy ribbon to use on these bookmarks at the moment. I got that ribbon from Shein. You can get heaps and heaps of colours and it's really cheap. So that's a good one to get. And then I'm just going to cut it and thread it through. Now you can thread it from the back as a loop, or you can thread it from the front as a loop. Depends on how you want that knot to sit. And then you've got it. It's done. So see how quick and easy that is. I know the wet method did take a little bit of time this time, but really, in reality, you can get this done in, 20 minutes, half an hour, and you've got a new little project for a gift, or you could use it for yourself. Isn't this such a cute autumn project? I'm really loving the acrylic bookmarks. The reason I love them is because they just show a little bit of technique, and you don't have to do a lot to make it look really cute and really effective. It's so easy to adapt to different times of the year. And look, I can see why they are popular all the way across the Cricut world. Great project for beginners in particular. That's why I did this project this week. It is really going back to basics with layering your vinyl and adding different colors of vinyl over a piece of acrylic. But if you are a seasoned crafter, then jump in there and use up all of that scrap vinyl, because this is a really great project for scrap vinyl. I hope you've enjoyed today's project, and I can't wait to see you next week for the beginning of our Easter season. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget, you can always jump on my Instagram, head over to my Etsy store, or even check out the videos YouTube recommends for you down below.